Welcome to this week's episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. I'm the host, Eric Bishop. This is a place where interesting people come to share their stories. I hope you'll support tonight's guest. As for myself, I'm a father, author, travel enthusiast, and lover of the outdoors. If you'd like to see some of my creative works, my novels, please go to my website, ericpbishop.com. Thanks for joining us tonight, and enjoy the journey. Welcome to another episode of A Tale of Two Scribes. Tonight, I am pleased to have KJ Waters on the program. Hey, KJ.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. Um, so I got introduced to you, I believe, based on your publicist, I know I got an email, and I don't get them too often, but every now and then I get an email, and someone will say, "Hey, do you want to have such and such in the program?" And most of the time, I don't know the authors, and
Yeah.
that doesn't bother me in the least. So I'll normally go down the rabbit trail of, okay, who is this person? Okay,
Worth it? Are they worth it?
what have they written, and am I going to be interested? Can I spend 30 or 40 minutes of my life talking to this person without going, "Oh my goodness, what do I say? Oh my goodness, I love writers. I'm a writer, but sometimes you have to pull teeth to get a yes or no or
Yeah,
anything."
I've been there. I've been there.
And one of the things that I thought was cool with you, and I said, "Well, we'll have no problem," is, "Hey, you've hosted a podcast before, so
Yeah,
you get this."
I get it.
So we were talking a little bit offline about that, but and I want to talk about your background, what got you into writing, and then of course I want to talk about fracturing time. But let's dive into the podcast world since that's kind of where I play in the podcast world a few times a month at least.
Yeah,
How did that happen, and what was that experience like for you?
yeah, well, I have a real dear friend who I met on Twitter back when we were about to both release our first books,
Okay.
and we did a Facebook Live, like Facebook party back in the day when those were a thing, and she was so much fun. She's British. She lives in Seattle, and we just had the best time. I'm like, how can I get more time with this person? So I was like,
Hmm.
hey, let's do a podcast. And she's like, that's a great idea. So we called it Blondie and the Brit. It's still
Hmm.
out there. We have 97 episodes. We interviewed authors. Writing, publishing, and beyond was our tagline. So it was
Okay.
same kind of thing that you're doing is talking to authors. And
Yeah.
we had a great time. We are also, you and I were talking ahead of time, is how much work it is to like edit the podcast. And now that you can do video ones, I think there's a little less pressure to like cut out every little rest sound
Right.
because you've got more visual going on there. So
Yep.
I might try it again at some point. But right now I have to focus and finish my writing because that's what was happening is like podcast is great. I'm not writing squat, too busy. So
That's too funny. Yeah, it is a lot of work, and we as we said offline, I don't have to do any of the editing. So
yeah,
John, who runs Spear Talk and has his own podcast, he has a guy named Nando who I should know where Nando lives. I know it's in South America. So Nando, if you're listening to this, which he will, because he has to listen to this, I'm so sorry. I think he lives in Brazil, but it's my gray hair is showing, and my brain
oh,
is leaving me at the moment. I believe he lives in Brazil. So one day I want to go down and see Nando because I'm a travel
cool.
enthusiast. But so he fixes all the stuff. If sometimes I'll have like a might have a thunderstorm. I know you were saying you lived in Texas, or do you live there now?
Yep.
You're there now. Okay, so you know about storms and all the good stuff that we get those in the South all the time. And I've had a few thunderstorms come through, and I'm like, just the time I'm filming, and I'm like, we'll be good. And no, we're not good. It like takes the internet out or power or something. So he can fix all those boo-boos when you're like, okay, now I have to restart this thing. Where did we leave off? And he can blend it all together. So. What did you think? So how for the I know you said you did almost 100 episodes, that's actually quite a lot, honestly. What was it was it what you thought it was going to be, or when you started off and more of just like this should be fun, did it stay fun, or did it turn into work at some point, or
the interviewing the authors was a lot of fun, coming up
Okay.
with the questions, the whole like recording part. It was just the after,
The
like
after.
sitting there for hours deleting breath sounds and taking out like the really long answer that rolled back around to something else. You're just like, oh,
Right.
that was what killed it. And you know, both of us were like, I think we should probably write books at some point. You know,
Yeah.
this podcasting is what we want. But yeah,
So
but I mean, it's definitely a lot of fun. I enjoyed
what
it.
it was it before you were a published author?
No, we had both published several books at that point by the
You
time we
had,
got
okay.
going. So, but and it was really neat just talking to authors about how their writing process and their advice on how to market and all that
Yeah.
stuff was wonderful. You know, it's always
It
helpful.
really is. And that's how you learn so much about the process. Like we were talking offline, I was with a small publisher when I first started. But even that, getting to that part, that was 7 years into writing before I got a publishing contract.
Wow.
Um, and so in that during that time, and like when I wrote my first novel, it was 2014, and I had no idea the business side of it. I had a story in my head. I was like I think I was mid 30s at the time. So I think I was starting my midlife crisis a little bit early.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you want to do with your life? I was working a corporate job. I was like, I don't want to be with corporate America the rest of my life. I want to write a novel, and I want that novel to make me $1 billion. I did one of those things. I wrote a novel.
Where's the novel, right?
I wrote a novel, which didn't go anywhere. So I wrote a second novel, didn't go anywhere. I wrote a third novel. You see the pattern here.
Yeah.
It wasn't until number four, and then that's not what, it didn't make me riches or anything,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
did make something off it. So I was a paid published author at that point. But during the time of that happening between like then and now, for sure, I grew up. I got over that midlife hump, whatever, all the fun stuff you kind of have happen in your life. And I realized, okay, what am I? And I learned this years ago, but am I doing this because I want to make money, or am I doing this? And I knew from the get-go, I was in the thought process of, "Oh, this will be successful." I realized that wasn't my driving force. And I learned that pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Of
Yeah.
I have stories I want to tell. I have, now a shelf of books behind me that I can leave from at the worst case scenario for my kids, that I get to have something to leave behind. And that was my driving force. Of course, then fast forward a couple of years ago where I actually started my own indie press. Then you're like, okay, I'm not looking to go buy a Ferrari with what I'm making, but I got to pay the bills. So how do I make enough money to cover my editor, my marketing, and all that? And that's where, honestly, that's where the work kicks in. The writing is the fun part. It's everything else that can be fun at times, but it's quite difficult. And obviously, you can attest to the fact of with a marketing background of I think that's the area where authors are normally probably the least qualified and also the least successful in the
Yeah,
process.
it's very diverse skill sets. Is sitting at your desk quietly writing, and then being an extrovert and selling your book and talking about it
Right.
all the time. And like, there's very, very different parts of your brain, and not everyone can do both well. Some people are great marketers and don't know how to write. I
Yeah,
have an
exactly.
editor who's a great editor, but she's like, I have real trouble. I'm so stuck in the details, it's hard for me to get the creativity for the storyline. So,
Hmm.
you know, we all have our skills, and hopefully ours blend into making great stories and then being able to market them.
Right, exactly. Well, and that's the other lesson I've tried to learn myself and then also teach other people that have come to me with questions is I try to tell them, and I tell this to myself, anytime I say this stuff, I'm preaching to myself of stay in your lane. So the parts that you're good at, stick to those. The parts that you're able to bring in someone else that's good at doing that, find the best person you can
Yeah.
afford, or find the person that you can, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, find a way of bartering so that you can get some help on certain things. And let someone that's good at marketing or let someone that's good at graphic design, let them do their part. I think that's the biggest fail authors have, especially if they go the indie route of I'm going to try to do it all myself. And normally there's a viable reason for that. It's because they don't have the money to go hire someone for,
Yeah.
$500 for a cover or 15, 2000 for a edit or whatever. So, and I get that. I was that person back in 2014. I had someone early in the process, I think maybe 16 or 17. I was talking to an author. I was having trouble getting, an agent, getting my first book picked up. And then my second one, they're like, well, go self-publish it. And my issue wasn't that I thought it was a cheap way of being, a inferior way of being published or anything like that. I knew there was a cost associated with it. And at that point, I didn't really have that extra surplus to hire people. And I'm like, I am not creating a book and going and making a cover on Canva and rolling the dice and thinking, well, this will be good enough. It's like, no, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it what I think is the
Yeah,
right way.
absolutely.
Um, Before we talk about your latest book, which came out on September 26th, because we're recording this a little earlier, but we'll put this out right after. Um, I always want to know I mean, what makes you want to sit down and write a book? So, where did your journey for writing a book begin?
That is a great question. This is what I always love asking other authors too, because everyone has a completely different story.
Right.
Mine started when I had my second child, and I decided to not work, so I was staying home with two little babies, and I
Hmm.
thought I was the director of marketing for a national company, and I had been busy doing stuff, and there's projects, and
Hmm.
lots of creative things that I was involved in, and all of a sudden I'm like finger painting, and like I gotta use my brain.
You're not using that marketing degree too much
Yeah,
during the
I
day.
wasn't doing a whole lot with that. And I was having a lot of fun, but like I just felt like this need and I had that, work ethics, like I could be doing something.
Hmm.
And we had moved from Virginia Beach to Florida.
Okay.
And 3 days after we moved to Florida, Hurricane Charlie hit.
Oh, wow.
And it went through Florida. And then
Hmm.
within 6 weeks, we had four major hurricanes hit, like directly crossing over my house. And I thought, that is a fabulous backdrop for something.
For something.
And so I was like, and I've been thinking about writing for a while. And I thought, well, I mean, I don't know squat about it, but who am I to say I can't try this? So
How hard can it be?
how hard can it be? And I was really into the Outlander series. Diana
Mhm.
Gabaldon had written her books, and I thought, I love the concept of sending a modern woman back in time, and the rules are totally different, and you have to figure
Mhm.
out what to do. And that's kind of what her story was about.
Right.
Mine's very different than hers, but like that little kernel of a thought, it's like, and you can go wherever you want. I'm the writer, I pick.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what started it with the backdrop of the hurricanes. So we've got four storms coming in a 6 week period, and that's each of my books is one of the storms.
When storms.
And her boyfriend is experimenting with a time travel device, and he
Hmm.
didn't tell her, and so he's sending her back to all these places, and she's. So I thought that's pretty fun. You've got
Hmm.
like a bad guy who's posing as a good boy, so you're trying to so like that, the sleeping with the enemy type feeling. So you've got a
Right.
thriller element, and you're trying to piece together the mystery of how's it happening and where's she going and all that stuff. So that kind of pulled me in. I thought that's what I would like to read.
Hmm.
So and with that backdrop, I was like, well, I've got the structure of the storms
Yeah.
to give me like, the beginning of the storyline. It's like that's a lot of tension and pressure and excitement and
Hmm.
suspense. So it's really fun putting this together. It took me about 10 years with
Yeah.
another baby on the way. I had a back surgery. I moved from Florida to Texas, so it's like all these things happen. And luckily, I was not in a rush.
Hmm.
And then I started to pull it together and I realized that I had written three books, not just one. I went a little, I told a lot of story.
You told a lot of stories.
Yeah. And so then I started like looking more at like how do you package these into, an actual length, the
Hmm.
right size length for a novel and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
the journey people take is it's so fascinating. And like you said, to ask that question, no one has even sometimes you don't even see similar stories. The stories are so varied. And I've talked to so many people over since 2014, really, but probably 2016, 17 when I started really reaching out to the writing community and getting to know other authors. And the one thing that's really been a constant, and I know a few people that have kind of, buck this trend, but most of the time when you talk to an author that's achieved any level of success, this isn't their first rodeo. It's not the first thing they didn't sit down at 18 years old and said, "I'm going to write a New York Times bestseller," and they did it that summer, and they hit it 20, 12 months later. Oh
Okay, nope.
no,
There's a backstory.
there's almost always a backstory, and a lot of times there's a full career. A lot of times, just talking to different authors of whether they were a lawyer, a bunch of lawyers. I've actually just met a bunch of lawyers that became writers, and it's like, what is it about law that drives you to make up these crazy stories involving murder and all kinds of crime? It's like there could be a link here. I wonder.
I think so. Well, lawyers, I happen to be married to one. They write a lot. They
They
have
do
to
write a
write.
lot. That's true.
So they've got, they always say you have to write 1 million words to make a good writer.
Yep.
They're already there by the time they're done with law school and a few years into the career. So that is an easier link. I'm a author consultant too, and I have a couple that are attorneys, and
Hmm.
I'm always very interested in their stories because they're good writers. At least
Yeah.
the process of writing,
Right.
like getting the words down. Are they a good storyteller is a different thing, but the ones I
Yeah.
have happen to be. So
Well, I was going to say, even depends on what type of law they practice. Now, David Baldacci is probably one of the more famous lawyers that really kind of made it big, and now has however many books he has out now, and probably I don't know how many series. But if you're out there practicing law and you're actually, in trials, which I know nothing about, I've read stuff about, but I'm talking through my rear in this one. But you have to be a storyteller if you're trying to create a case. I guess you could try to win a case by saying he walked in the building, pulled out a gun, took the money, got in the car, escaped. Cops caught him two days later. Nah, that's not a very compelling story. Tell us more, give us some details. Put
yeah,
this together in a form that's going to make the jury go, oh, yeah, he did it.
yeah, I bought into that whole thing. Yeah, even if it isn't always completely true, you're setting the
Well,
stage. You're getting the jury to buy into what you're selling. So
yeah, absolutely. So you worked on him for about 10 years, and then what was the process like for you to get the first book published? How did that happen?
yeah, well, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to an agent, and if everything's gonna go great, I'm just gonna get like picked up. And I went and talked to a guy in the publishing field.
Okay.
He was like, okay, it's going to be at least 2 years for them to look at your manuscript and get back to you. And it'll probably end up being a no because no one gets picked up their first chance. I'm like, I am so impatient. There is no way I'm
Right.
waiting around for 2 years. So it's like, what are my other options? Because, well, and I was about the same time as you. This was in 2014.
Okay.
I was ready to go. I'm
Hmm.
impatient. I did it. I'm not waiting 2 years sitting around twiddling my thumbs. So what I should have done is written the second and third books, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. But I went and I researched the self-publishing market, and I thought, what what harm can it do?
Hmm.
And if I want to pitch later, I still own it. It didn't get picked up
Right.
by any like some of the small presses that take advantage of you or any bad things. So
Hmm.
I also had met Suzanne, as I mentioned before, on Twitter, and
Hmm.
she was in the same process. So we were sharing notes. We were talking about,
Nice.
how do we do this? Have you looked
Yep.
at this thing? Oh, here's this new technology. We can try this. So it was really fun to have like a little buddy that we were both like completely clueless, but determined and
Hmm.
good marketers. And so that's kind of how we did. We jumped in, and then after book 2 and 3, I started doing author consulting because
Mm.
there's so much to learn, and I felt really bad for all the people. A lot of the people that come to me have been with a bad publisher that
Yeah.
just was making money off of you and not
Right.
making money for you. And so, I feel compassion towards other authors is like I have these skills, I learned this stuff, and I also have a marketing background. So in that sense, it's like I can give back, to help people helped me along the way. A lot of authors were there,
Hmm.
like, okay, I've been through this. Here's what you need to do, these things. And, just it's kind of a really nice community that people can
Yeah.
give back and donate some time or just kind of bring someone along under your wing and help them figure it
Right.
out. Once you can figure it out, it's not that complicated. But
Mm-mm.
standing at the edge, the precipice of how do I do all this stuff? And there's technical aspects, and then
Hmm.
there's so many choices. Which one do you do? It could seem completely overwhelming. So
I had one of my writing buddies I've known for several years. We've met up a few times. He messaged me like 2 weeks ago and said, "I've got something here. I think I'm just going to go down the self-publishing route." And I said, "When?" He said, "Maybe December." I said, "Okay, reach out to me a little before that. I'll put aside some time." And yeah, if I can help someone learn things the easier way, because I had to learn so many things the hard way. And now I say that there was people that helped me on plenty of things, and I,
yeah,
I still have multiple authors I'm indebted to because, man, they just saved me spending lots of money, probably chasing my tail and not getting anywhere, and also lots of time trying something, knowing that that's guaranteed to fail. Don't
yeah,
even bother wasting your time
yeah,
with that. So that knowledge base I've been able to build up now for really since before I got published with a small publisher. Really, probably a lot of the knowledge started probably in 2017, and just kind of I'm forgetting probably more than I should at this stage, but hopefully a few of those nuggets stay in there, and I can either pull them out or the author or creative side of me kicks in, and I can make it seem like I know what I'm talking about. But no, just having that opportunity to then share with folks, and that's the thing. And I've mentioned this in the podcast before. To me, that was probably the one of the more surprising things once I started interacting with other authors, trying to get an agent, eventually getting a publisher. Um, I assumed falsely 'cause coming out of a business background, and I'd worked with some great business people, so it sounds like they're all, trying to step on your back to get ahead. But I assumed there'd be a lot of competition. Like, oh, I can't give you the secret sauce because then that's
Yeah.
something I worked hard to get, and it's been 180 degrees difference than I anticipated. It's been people saying, "Hey, man, I've spent time figuring this out. Here it is.
Yeah.
Use
Yeah.
this method or do that," which is super encouraging.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you've got the ugly side of authorship with all the Twitter drama and
Sure.
everything that happen out there. I obviously stay out of the fray of that. It's like, come on, you guys, y'all can fight over this stuff. I'm just gonna do my work and get my stuff published. So luckily I don't get pulled into that stuff. But there is a lot of drama. I would recommend people just step backwards,
Yeah.
walk away.
Walk away, and then I think a lot of times what you have to end up doing is focus on the writing. And again, I'm preaching to myself when I say that because I'm like way behind on my next project. I'm editing a book that's coming out early next year and writing a book that's coming out next summer, but I'm not doing much writing currently. Maybe I'll be doing it on a plane on Saturday.
So
I'll have the laptop out and I can knock out a couple chapters. But that's kind of the way I kind of stabilize myself, especially when I kind of not I don't get pulled into the fray of the junk that goes on with the authors, but that stuff's a distraction. So I always try to pull myself back to what should I be doing? I should be writing a good story.
yeah.
That's what I
Well,
should
that's
be doing.
the core, which is if you can market to the cows come home, but if you don't have anything you're writing next, what's the point? So yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of authors are like, how do you balance marketing and writing? I'm like, well, write story, fix the story, edit the story,
exactly.
get an editor, get beta readers, the story, because if you don't have the story and the next story is what sells the rest of your books,
Right.
you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to figure out the one I'm working on for next summer. I had to have a good idea because I book four in my series really is what happens after book two. So the one that came out this summer is happening the same time as book four. They're paralleling each other, which
Interesting.
is an interesting thing to do in the thriller world. It's working, and I've gotten positive feedback, and it's not arrogance or confidence, it's confidence more than anything that I know I can pull off what I want to do. But probably a traditional publisher would have been like, no, you can't do that. Well, the beauty is I'm not going to sell 100,000 copies. I'm not going to do any crazy. I don't have a team of people that are going to either starve to death or feast like kings based on how I sell. So if I'm happy with what I'm doing and I'm getting positive feedback from my readers, what else do I care about?
Well,
I
you get
don't.
the creative freedom to try new things like that. That's one
Yeah,
of the beauties of being independent, Story.
absolutely.
My story has so many different elements. It's like, the Outlander series, she had trouble having anyone pick it up because it was it history?
Right.
Was it science fiction fantasy? There was had so many different things in it. And mine are similar to that. There's a lot of elements and it's kind of hard to focus on one to say it's definitely a thriller. Well, I mean, it's a lot of things. So in the indie world, you can make these cool, fantastic stories that may
Hmm.
not necessarily get picked up. And I think it makes a really good story. I mean, that's what I really liked about hers is that there were so
Hmm.
many elements. There was nothing, no
Right.
part of the story that you're like, oh, get to the good stuff. So
Which is, I hate to say it, what you find plenty of times on books that are on the New York Times bestseller list. Because I think the downfall with the and again, I might eventually go big publishing.
yeah,
I've got some ideas that I think would translate better in that medium versus going the indie world. But the problem with them sometimes is they have a formula and they believe, and sometimes rightfully so, their formula sells books and gets books on the New York Times bestseller list. but are they the best books that are written, or are they the most engaging? Talked to a lot of people, and I've had a lot of messages over the years, and people that will message me and be like, I read the book by this person, that person, that person, that were all New York Times bestsellers. They bored me to tears.
Yeah. Once you're familiar with the formula, it
Yeah,
does get a little like that, the romance books have a very like you do this and then you do that and then you've
right,
got the cute meat and this thing and it's like I've listened to a few and I'm like they're nice stories. If you've heard one though, like you know where it's going,
right,
I kind of like something very original, and that's what I'm trying to write is something that nobody's seen before. I'm coming from a different angle and I'm gonna completely mess up the reader because it's not going where you think it is. Even though I'm sending these little clues, it's
right.
going here, it's going over here. You didn't even
Love it.
know that you could go that way. And, that's what's so fun about it.
So when I was reading your bio and reading about your latest book, I was trying to think of like, okay, what my brain was going to mode of like, what do I know that's done time traveling? And for whatever reason, the first thing that came to mind, I'm dating myself by this, although there's a more recent version of the show which I didn't see, is I was thinking Quantum Leap. In the original Quantum Leap show, I love.
So, yep.
Now I'm totally drawing a blank on the actor's names. Terrible, but
Oh, yeah.
Harry Dean Stanton and
I can't remember his name either. I could see his face.
I know, so can I.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Them.
I used the little element of in Quantum Leap, you leap into someone's body who's already in that time. And
Gotcha.
that's how I use the time travel. And
Okay.
that's been a lot of fun to mess with because what happens to the body that's here in this time?
Right.
And things can happen to you when you're not there. So like I really play around with, all those little elements that, you know. So I love that you brought up Quantum Leap. That was definitely one of my favorite shows growing up. I guess did they make another one? I feel
They
like they
did. They made one. I was it NBC. Someone. I don't watch the big networks, but I have
yeah,
this. I have this. I have like Peacock and uh. Do I have more? I have a few. I know I have a few of the apps. Paramount Plus, which is
yeah,
CBS, but I don't watch like network. Like there was something recently talking about how they were getting rid of the Late Show with Colbert,
yeah,
and it was kind of like saying, well, Kimmel will be next, and then Tonight Show, Fallon, they'll all go down the line, and there was a lot of uproar about that. That Colbert, that they're getting rid of the Late Show, and I was reading some of it just because I was interested and curious to see what people are saying, and then I thought about it. It's like, besides seeing clips on YouTube or whatever, when's the last time I sat down and watched a late night television show like live?
yeah.
I couldn't tell. Probably Jay Leno was probably still hosting the Tonight Show last time. I don't know if I've ever
It's been
watched
a while,
Fallon live.
man. It's been a while.
Well, I met Jay and my people on my show. I had my kids a couple years ago. We took kids up to see family in Connecticut. We went over to Newport, Rhode Island. So I paid for like I paid the package that lets you go to three of the mansions. So
Yeah.
we got through the second mansion. My daughter was just starting to get hangry. She needed food. She was tired. She was like, she wanted to skip the mansion. I'm like, I paid for those mansions. We're gonna go see the Marble House or whatever the third one was gonna be, the Breakers. Um, so the closest thing to the mansion we were at the time was a Stop and Shop, which is a grocery store. So we go in this grocery store. I think my mom was with my daughter and I'm with my son. And I'm walking down this aisle and I'm like, that's Jay Leno. I mean, you can't miss Jay Leno.
Yeah,
I mean, you
you
see Jay
can't
Leno,
miss him.
you see that face and you see his chin and you're like,
Chin and hair. Yeah.
he is a unique human being. So I come kind of back around the corner and I kind of like, then I'm going to stalk him basically, like, where's Jay Leno? Well, I come across and I meet up with the manager of the store and he kind of made eye contact with me and I'm like, dude, Jay Leno's like in the aisle over there. He goes, yeah, he has a house down the road. He's here all the time.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, I love Jay Leno. I started talking about it. He goes, go talk to him. I was like, no, it'll piss him off. He goes, no, he's okay with that. Go talk to him.
That's cool. So you
I
got
went back
permission.
around and talked to him. Then, spent like 30 seconds. He was with his wife, Mavis, met his wife. Um, he was super kind and then ended up leaving and my mom and my daughter were there. So I was like, you got to see Jay Leno. He's right over here. So we go back over and talk to him one more time. Then I pushed my luck probably. It's like, can I get a picture? So he was cool with it. Got a
Oh,
picture.
hey,
He doesn't look super thrilled. Everyone that I showed the picture to were like, he looks a little irritated with
he's
you. And I
had
was
enough
like,
of you.
as he should be, because he's literally probably flew in from California, getting ready to go to his mansion out at the
Wants to
point,
chill.
and
He's
he's
on his
grocery
toes and he wants
shopping.
to go back.
So we got this picture of I put it on my Christmas card that year because it's like
Wow,
Leno.
that's
So and
hilarious.
there's the cart of his food, and my kids are like zooming in on the picture, micro analyzing everything, being like, Jay's got Pepto-Bismol, he's got Coca-Cola, he's got this, he's got that, and I'm just like, poor Jay. He was so
Too
nice.
much into his business. That's funny. But he
And
put up with you.
it was
That's
funny as we were leaving and going to our car, he was already walking out with his wife, and someone pulls up, slows down, rolls the window down, and they start yelling, Jay. Jay, the Tonight Show sucks ever since you gave it over, since Fallon took over. And Jay's just like, smile, nods, doesn't say anything. And I'm just like, is this real life right now? So,
that's funny. I love
super fun experience.
it.
But I don't know how we got to that point from the time travel,
I don't know.
but we need to get back. So, what was the what was the thought process besides bringing time travel into it? Just because it was something that interested you and no one else that you were reading had done it the way you wanted to do it?
Well, I mean, I just, as an author, time travel gives you permission to go anywhere at any time. You
Absolutely.
can blend modern story with old-fashioned story if you've got
Hmm.
two points of view, which I do. So I thought it's kind of I was a new author at the time. I thought, well, I mean, find places in history that are really interesting to me personally, and probably other people will like that element of it. And then just, like I was saying, the process of putting a modern woman somewhere where the rules are totally different. There's so much to play with there.
Hmm.
And putting yourself in, the different clothes, the way women were used as more collateral. They weren't really supposed to read or write. If you go back far enough, they were
Right.
mostly just a commodity.
Yeah.
So it's a hard place for a modern woman where we can say whatever we want and, wear whatever we want
Right.
and say no. That those rules
Same.
don't apply. Yeah, I mean, you don't get those options. So like
No, you're right.
I can go put myself in that character, but I
Hmm.
don't actually have to get, filthy and gross, and I don't have to go through all the things that they would have to go through. I can live, in a nice way and then go sleep in my bed with my hot shower
I was
after.
gonna say you can have a running water, a toilet. You can have things that,
Everything.
yeah. I mean, I'll every now and then I'll kind of be preachy to my kids, and I'll be like, "Do you realize that like 20% of the world, I think it's even higher than 20, but I normally go to 20% because I know it's at least that number, does not have access to like clean, running, functioning water." I mean, so you're definitely talking well over 1 billion people on this planet. And then you think of us in America where many people have 2, 3 bathrooms. They have 5 bedrooms, they have 2-car garage, and they have, the white picket fence. They have everything. It's
Yeah,
like you got people that have to walk and go get water out of the river and boil it to get drinking water. And you
yeah,
still probably don't want to probably have that.
yeah.
Because if you
Well,
do it
that's
wrong,
it.
it's called dysentery.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it kills people.
Sure.
But yeah, it's wild. One thing I was going to ask you too is we talked offline about it, and I was just thinking as you were talking because it would probably be some great set pieces. You took your daughter and you went to France and England this summer. Any thoughts for future? Did that spurn any kind of ideas for future time travel involvement in those
Well, I
things?
I sent my character back to London, and so
Okay,
it was really fun to be. I was in England and Ireland and Scotland right after I graduated grad school, but so it was
gotcha.
like really fun to go back, but
Yeah.
also just to be like walking in the streets because parts of London are really old that are in my book. So we went
Yeah.
to a few of the places. There's the bakery where the Fire of London started. I have
Hmm.
different what my second book I send her back to the Fire of London. She lands in the body of a girl who has the bubonic plague.
Wow.
And if you know your history, in 1666, the huge fire burned down the city and killed all the rats that were spreading the plague.
Hmm.
What do? I stick her in a room where what they used to do with people who had the plague is they would nail the window shut and the door shut, and they're like, "Hope you're fine. See you at the
Yeah.
other end, baby." And so,
Right.
like, let's put our character into that. An 8-year-old girl. What is she gonna do?
Hmm.
Not well. She does something. I wrote it, but like I love finding that little piece of history that a lot of
Yeah.
people know, but like let's go in there. What did
Hmm.
it look like? What was it like for this young girl who's trying to she didn't want to die,
Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, yeah, that's that little element. with the bubonic plague comes into fracturing time,
Mm,
and that now she brought it back with her. And so not
hmm.
to give a lot away, but that's a very important premise of book four. So
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you could actually go. So I was in London back in November, so that was my third time going there. And I was actually I had my daughter last night, and we were I picked the movie. We'll sometimes pick throw a movie on a Saturday or Sunday night, and I picked it and I threw on oh it's, not Secrets of the Thing, the museum one with Ben Stiller and why am
oh,
I
not
think
at the museum.
not the museum, but the one that's the London one, which is the third one,
Yeah.
Secrets of the Tomb or
Oh,
something like that. It's the one that takes place over mainly in the British Museum,
yeah, which we
and
went
so
to. I was in there and I was
yeah.
thinking about that movie half the time I was in.
So Ben Stiller, or in an early part of the movie, Ben Stiller is with his son out, and they're right outside the Tower of London, and there's the Tower Bridge behind them. And of course, my daughter's next to me on the couch, and I'm like nudging her. I'm like, I literally wanted to stand at that spot to get that photo, which I got, and she just kind of like, yeah, okay. I was like,
Mm.
hello, no, no, no. I was excited. She had
Yeah. I
no
took my
interest.
daughter to the Tower of London. She was 23 and she's like, I don't know who these people are interested in any of this. I'm like, you could learn so much. To me, it was like so fascinating to think about, that they had like zoo animals that were there, part of the Tower of London,
Hmm.
and people would give gifts. It's like the gift that you absolutely hate. They're like, oh,
Hmm.
here's an elephant. I love you. And then the guy's like, what do I do with this?
What do I do with it?
So
Yeah.
they put it in what they actually had at the Tower of London is there's like it's probably about 10 feet tall. It has a window at about 8 feet, and
Hmm.
it's about, probably 10 by 10 room. And this elephant is sitting in there. And you're like, wow, that's such a nice gift. It's almost like, I hate you, but I'm going to show respect because you're the
Right.
king. What do you do with this ridiculous critter?
I don't like this king. What should I give him? I'll give him an
Yeah.
elephant. That'll screw things up.
Give him a lion that he has to keep and it murders people
It
because they
could,
can't keep it. They did that too. It's like, wow, that's what the animal crackers are kind of about.
they
It's
would
like,
quickly figure out they could feed people to the lion, though. That's the bad
yeah,
thing. They'd be like,
right.
hey, you open your mouth? Hey, we got a room for you to go sit in. Good
That's
luck.
right.
So
Go visit the lion cage over there.
it's God save the king. If you don't get that out of your mouth, then you can go visit the lion. So
Yeah, yeah, interesting. But yeah, I mean, I love all that history stuff. So like to
yeah.
me, when I pick different places to time travel, it's like what it was, as a kid, I would read all those books, interesting histories, mysteries of time or whatever.
Right.
So one of the places that I picked in that second book, Shattering Time, was um you ever heard the Lost Colony of Roanoke Island?
Yeah, I lived in Virginia, so yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
1588. It's actually Cape Hatteras now, Hatteras Island. We don't know what happened to them. The governor went home for more supplies to England, came back, everything was gone. The people are gone, the
Yep.
building are gone. And so I've been fascinated by that forever. And so I was like, I could write what happened, and you're not going to
Hmm.
tell me that I'm wrong because nobody knows what
Nobody
happened.
knows.
So I was like, here we go. So, like putting people in, then my character who in that story, she wakes up in the body as they're burying her.
Oh wow.
And so clumps of dirt, and she looks around, and you can imagine what people in 1588 and coming up out of the grave. So I was like,
Hmm.
let's put her in a really bad situation and see what happens.
I love the creativity. So, and that's the beauty of writing, especially when you're not encumbered by people telling you what to write. Put it that way, I guess.
Yeah.
Feeling like you can just have it in your own control of write whatever comes to your mind. And obviously the audience is going to be the one to judge whether they want to read the book or read the next books. So you might have some it depends on what you're writing, of course. If you're writing a fantasy or if you're writing a sci-fi, that opens up the world where you can do things. However, I have a buddy that writes that type of stuff, and he'll get people that will send him stuff and be like, "That's not what a blaster would do in space." And it's like, it is kind of a fake book. I mean, we don't actually have
Maybe.
people flying through space with like on animals blasting each other. So,
Good point.
but physics
Yeah,
rules that out.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Well,
Which is probably one of the bad things with I have to be careful with, not bad, but what I have to be careful with is I write more political thrillers, suspense, that type of stuff. I have to be very careful because almost everything that's in my stories is based on some real events or real places or whatever. So I do have to get details right. And I had
Yeah.
learned that lesson years ago from a New York Times bestseller that says, if you've got to have a scene that involves guns, your best bet is to say he drew a pistol or drew a weapon, not he drew a Glock 19 with red dot sights and this type and the 2.5 pound trigger pull and all these things because you might get it right, but if you get that wrong and if it
I
becomes a
know.
successful book, you'll
Yeah.
hear from a lot of experts that actually know what the trigger pull is. You got it wrong.
Yeah, no, that is true. That's one of the things with writing historical fiction too, is like I try to make my
Yeah,
story as real as possible. What were they wearing? What happened? How did all the different elements of society work? I mean, there's so much to that.
right.
And it makes it very complicated. But if you get it wrong, like in my first draft of Stealing Time, I had a few people read it and they're like, you would never use a chamber pot out in the country and throw it out the window. I was like, I'm an American. How am I supposed to know about chamber pots? But like so then I was like, I really got to nail this. You don't want
Yeah,
people cutting up, your history. So one of my reviews says something to the effect of, I believe whatever KJ says about history, and even if it's not true, she writes it so well. I'm sure that's how history was. And I was like, yes, that's what I want is people to like, I tried really hard to make sure
yeah,
that was how, as much as we can, how were things in that time period. And the
yeah,
further back you go, the less information you have to pull. So you
right.
really have to try hard. I know one of the themes of my books, the covers all have clocks on it. And my dad
Hmm.
is an antique clock. His hobby is fixing antique clocks. So
Okay.
every book I'm like, okay, Dad, here's the people, here's the time period, here's the place. Give me something that would be there. And the
That's
hardest one
funny.
was 1588 in the
Wow.
colonies. What do they got?
Yeah.
Well, apparently they might have a table clock that sat on the table kind of face down. I mean, not face down, but almost like a paperweight or something. And it
Yeah.
was something it was what they would take in the ship, a ship's clock.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that you wouldn't have a lot of things, but in one colony you may have one clock so
Right.
that people could stay on time. And it wasn't like everyone would have something. And so I was
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm gonna need your help on this, Dad. So he's really good at like giving me all those details. And then I have my son is very sciencey. He's getting his PhD and has
Hmm.
studied. His undergrad was in like 4 different degrees of different sciences. So I'm like,
Okay.
okay, I know that time travel doesn't really exist, but help me with some of the we've got string
You
theory.
don't you don't know that it doesn't exist. You just haven't been
Well,
visited yet.
they
So,
actually say that you can travel in time. There's that's part of quantum physics. So
hmm.
all the big physicists, Stephen Hawking's and them will say, but it's like 34 seconds or something. I'm like, I'm
Right.
talking a little bigger than that. But anyway, so like to me, it's like I really want it to be as realistic as possible. I am
Hmm.
asking the readers to suspend belief because we can't really go back in time. But all the other pieces, the storm stuff, the history, the science, the clocks, all of that has to hit home, just like you're saying with your books.
Hmm.
It's so important. You're
Yeah.
building credibility with your reader, and all those
Right.
pieces are just as important as the storyline. And would the character do that? Would they say that? How would they react in the situation? So there's so many elements that you
Yeah.
got to get right. And back to your question about why time travel. I mean, that's part of why. It's
Why
like
not?
there's so many little pieces you got to get right,
Yeah.
and it's really fun. It takes a while. I don't push these books out fast, but
Hmm.
boy, I have fun writing them. There's so many little elements that you get to soak in as you're learning about the world you're creating. So
That's my happiest time in the process is when and I'll start up here probably the end of October is when I'll start really dive. I've started the fourth book, but I'm not far into it. I've got it planned. I've got a lot of parts planned, which is not normally how I do the process. Um, but I'll actually sit down and every night will be writing night, probably end of October, because I need to get a draft done by early part of the next year, for sure. But that'll be my happy stuff. All the marketing and all the other stuff, I don't dislike it. But when I can sit on my couch, put my laptop, and especially if I don't know what I'm necessarily writing, like I don't know where I'm going for that chapter, that to me is where the joy really lies. Because I can't, just me personally, I'm at the spot now where I've published five, written eight, plus all the other stuff you combine in is probably another two or three if you put them together. So I'm comfortable enough in the process. But I used to just wing it. It was all the first couple hours. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and it showed.
Total pantser.
Total pantser. And now it's more still pantsing elements, but I have ideas. I always knew where I wanted to go. So I'd say not 100% pantsing because I always knew when I started the story, where I wanted to go with it. But
Yeah, yeah,
now I'll kind of map out different chapters I know I need. I'm just not sure when I'm going to do them, or
yeah.
by the time I get to that chapter, will I change it? I'm kind of back myself in a little bit corner because in book three of my series that came out this summer, um, I have instances that are also taking place in book four. So those, and most of those, I didn't have an idea I gave a glimpse of like a body washed up in Brazil, and what happened to that person and what all the events on that. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. I guess in November when I start writing that chapter, like, oh yeah, I need that chapter.
You'll get it. Yeah,
I
that's
will. And
it.
I'll be so like those nights are just so much fun where I don't ever get done at a night when I'm done writing and be like, ah, that was such a chore. It's always like I had a blast. I enjoyed the
Yeah,
process.
yeah, it is a lot of fun. It's funny you did that with your third and fourth book. I took this fourth book, Fracturing Time. I one of the time travel elements goes back to the first book.
Hmm.
And so I'm wondering, I planned it way at the beginning. So it's like I finally got to go write those things that connect
Right.
in. And I'm wondering if I had a couple people emailing or saying something happened. Something happened at this point in the book. And I'm like, yeah, you're one out of whatever many people
Yeah.
read it that actually caught
I
that. So
picked up on that.
it's
Yeah.
really fun. I love messing with my readers like that. So I'm hoping you're kind of doing some of those things too. It's like, well, not only you're messing with yourself too, because you're like, I gotta find my way out of this.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's to me, part of the joy of it is to try to
Yeah,
put yourself in a situation where you're going to have to work your way out of it. And fortunately, it's not like the most complicated stuff in the world that it's like, oh my goodness, don't box yourself into an absolute corner where there is no air hole. See, if you have an air hole or two, you'll find a way out of there.
yeah, yeah. I had to, as I was writing Fracturing Time, I know I'm writing another book after this, and I was like, if she does this right now, I'm screwed. What do I do? So I was like,
Right.
you got to make sure, like you're saying, there's a little air hole so that you've got that kernel to start up in the next book. So yeah, same thing. You have to kind of think ahead too. You think back and you think ahead. There's a
Yeah.
lot.
It makes the process fun though.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Well, tell our listeners and people that are watching this, more of YouTube probably than listeners, tell them about fracturing time. Give the sales pitch to them, and then of course they probably are also going to need to go back and buy three previous books. But do they stand alone, or do they have to be
Um,
read in
I've
order?
written them so they stand alone. This one in particular, I wanted to make sure that I just threw in a little backstory as they needed it so that they don't. And then
Gotcha.
there's people that have read the other books and they just forgot that little element. So, but
Hmm.
it's not a data dump, it's just a little bit so that I feel like they can read it. I have several beta readers that haven't read the other books and like they totally got it. It wasn't like they were lost, but it
There
did
you go.
make them want to go read the other ones. So you just
There
have
you
to,
go. Absolutely.
yeah.
Uh, Instead of selling one book, sell four books.
I
That's
will.
always
Okay.
better.
So, Fracturing Time is book four in the Stealing Time series. And the Stealing Time series covers the summer of 2004, where hurricanes hit. And I was telling you before we started, I moved to
Mhm.
Florida. 3 days later, Hurricane Charlie hit. And within 6 weeks, we had four major hurricanes cross right over my house. So that's the backdrop. Each of the books is one of the hurricanes,
Mhm.
and then there's time travel involved, and the main character Ronnie Anders gets sent back. In book four, they've been through all these things. I've kind of set them up in a very safe place at the end of book three, and so they're in the hospital. Mike has a head injury, and they're both like waiting for Jeffrey, who's Ronnie's ex, to attack. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
she has brought the bubonic plague back from book two and Shattering Time. And that plays a really important role. So on the island of Puerto Rico, which is where they are,
Mhm.
um, they Ronnie comes down with the plague, and there's something happening. Homeland Security is getting involved because there's been a weird pulse every time she's gone back in time. there's
Hmm.
a pulse. And so in this book, Homeland Security is putting the two together, bioterror weapon, possibly with the plague, and the pulse. And
Wow.
so Ronnie's caught in the middle of it. They're trying to figure out, and she's caught between Homeland Security and the hospital,
Hmm.
and then also trying to protect Mike and herself from Jeffrey, who's out there with a time travel device, waiting to get rid of them because they're the only two people in the world who know about this time travel device. So they're at
The
risk in a
secret.
lot of different ways. And so she's trying to manage all these things, and Mike is too. And so it's a very suspenseful book. I kind of wrote it as a thriller, and you've got the storm elements, and you've got all these other pieces coming into play. So
Hmm.
it was so much fun to write. I just had one of my beta readers saying it was well worth the wait. He's so excited. He loved every second of it. The character building. He's like, I'm gonna miss the characters, and I'm like, don't worry, I've got another one coming after this. So, but this book, the way I've written book 1 through 4 is I've written it almost like a Netflix series. So at the end of book 1 leads directly into book 2. It's all
Gotcha.
within about 6 week period. So
Okay.
it's very fast paced. As one ends, the next one starts like that very next day. And so finally, book 4, I did wrap up a lot of the elements through the whole series.
Hmm.
That will be very satisfying. And I've kind of given it a little bit of a resting point so that I can jump off into the next book, but I have another series I'm working on until then. So I do have some spin-offs that I'll be writing on this of people that when Ronnie goes back in time, they bump a body, whoever's body she lands in. I can write the story of that person that gets bumped back in time. So I have some
Hmm.
short novellas I'm going to be writing of the
That's
character
awesome.
pieces. So
Yeah, I love the creative side of it. And being able to do just that, it's kind of one of the reasons the series that I did was instead of having like a main protagonist that would, theoretically carry every book, I wanted to create a role within the secret that came out of the Secret Service, basically. The reason I did that was I wanted to make it so that, maybe in one of the books, the main body man dies. Not guaranteed to get to the end of
love
any
your
book.
babies.
So yeah, and I did that in book three. I killed. It wasn't a massive character, but it was a character of significance, especially for the third book. Had a smaller role in the other books. And I got an email a couple of weeks ago from someone who was like, I choked up. I got teary-eyed when you killed this character, and I'm like, well, good, because so did I. So I'm glad other people felt that emotion
Yeah,
of like,
I do
and
too,
then
Rob.
it's like, but I needed it. I needed the character they were tied to have a reason to do what they do next.
Ah,
I
yeah,
needed I needed some monumentous event to occur.
yeah,
And so how I will jump forward on that in future books, because it won't really be something in the fourth book. It'll probably come down the line of six or seven. I don't know, but to me, that's also the fun part is like
yeah,
you were saying, I like the idea of having the world. And what I do, it's a little different from some thriller writers, is a lot of times they'll have a protagonist that will carry the series. I have a protagonist in the first couple books. Yes, that's still there, but I like to let some of the smaller characters have their own books. So, like in this third book, it was one of the minor characters that really took the major role. Book four will be back to the main protagonist. Book five is going to be two of the minor characters from an earlier book are going to have the heavy lifting in book five. Um, to me, it just makes it more fresh and fun too, from even
yeah.
a reading perspective.
Well, yeah, and it's back to the creativity, like the formulaic. You've got book one, and then the reader's expecting it to be kind of laid out the same. I've made sure that each of my books is completely
Hmm.
different in that sense. I want to turn them on their heads so that they,
Yeah,
never know what to expect. It kind of puts them off edge, and that's what a thriller is all about. You think you know where it's
yeah,
going, you're comfortable in this space, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart. And that, I mean, to me, that's what I love to read. So it's fun that you're doing that too. And then, there's threads that go through the series that are so satisfying when you get to book 5 and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that guy. And
right.
here's that kernel that was planted there, and it's now blossoming into this storyline. And I mean, to me, that's what's so fun. It's not just the full book, but then the series thread
Yeah.
that you can bounce back. And, that's what I do with book 4 is bouncing into book 1. And it's just
Hmm.
like, wow, I have so much freedom, especially with time travel. I don't need to have this linear time crap
Yeah.
like you do in your book. So I can mess around with that whole layer too. So
That is true. And that's fun. So I had an idea years ago. I've still got it in my notes for time travel for sure, but more the historical side, like putting some
yeah,
kids in a time travel situation.
fun.
Other authors, though, have done stuff similar. So I think Rush Limbaugh had a series. Ted Bell, who passed away, I knew Ted. He did one. I think he only did one book. He might have done two. That was kind of in that realm. So the idea I had was before I even knew they had books. And their books are different than each other, but
Yeah, yeah.
I'll need to go back and probably reread their books before I one day maybe go back to that idea and go, okay,
What's
that's
different?
been done. How do I do it? How do I do it on my
Yeah,
spin,
from
my
another
opinion?
angle. That's kind of neat though. When you get there, let's cross promote our time travel
Yeah,
stuff.
I'd love to. Absolutely. So, yeah, I don't like the idea of just writing the one same vein of storyline for the rest of my writing career, however long that is.
Yeah,
I like the idea of at some point being like, I'm good. I'm gonna just and being in the indie world, you can do that. That doesn't mean your audience is gonna follow you,
yeah,
but much different versus if you've got, a deal with Simon and Schuster and they go, "Hey, we need
hmm
that 12th Body Man and we need the 13th Body Man book and the 14th and
yeah. And you're like, but I'm tapped out, man.
right." And then I think that's also I've gotten away and I've talked about this in the podcast for a lot of those traditional series I used to read years ago with the main protagonists. I don't read them anymore because I get the concept behind what they're doing, and they still draw huge audiences. Some of those books make New York Times bestseller lists. Totally respect that. You know, when you read the first chapter, well, such and such character will be there on the last chapter because they got a 5 book deal with Simon and Schuster. They can't kill him
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
So then
yeah,
the whole mystery or the suspense or the thriller part of it is how do they keep this person alive through the book? What do they have to go through to get to their journey? But to me, that takes away a lot of the juice
yeah.
too. It's
Absolutely.
and also the other thing too that I found with those books that I loved so much growing up is how many times can a character get shot or thrown out of a plane or fall out like a it's like was it the third or fourth John Wick movie, which I love the John Wick movies. They're great. They're suspend disbelief and just
Yeah.
enjoy watching them. But when he started going off buildings and landing on the ground and like being back up the next scene, you're like, I don't know if I can completely see that happening. And I know you have to turn off reality, but that's really turning off reality.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of the action movies. They spend a lot more time on their special effects than the writing. I'm just like,
Yeah.
get a good writer, spend another like 2 weeks on the script, man. That's all you need. And then they spent all the money on the explosions and the
I
car
know.
chases. And I'm like, whatever, we got the same movie again, no plot and lots of killing and car chases.
Yeah. If they're really well done though, I'm a sucker for them too. So it is actually nice sometimes to just have something that you almost don't have to think about. That you're
Yeah,
watching just because you know it's going to be
right.
a good comedy or it's going to be a good smash up bang up kind of movie where people are going to be have explosions and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, like the
Especially now.
Jurassic Park movies, there's like people are saying how they didn't like the last one. I was like, I don't care. It's dinosaurs running around. That's cool. And it's Chris Pratt. How could you not like Chris Pratt? So
My daughter actually is not, so she is mad that at Chris Pratt because he kind of messed up the Avengers world. So
oh.
Star-Lord kind of messed it up for a bunch of people. So she holds it personal against Chris
Oh,
Pratt,
all right. Well,
which
maybe you're mad at him, but
ironically, you talk about like the 6 degrees of separation or whatever. Ironically, I know someone who is good friends with Chris Pratt. I'm like, you realize like I have a indirect connection through Chris Pratt. The only thing she wanted, and this was years ago, she was like, can you reach out to your friend who can reach out to Chris Pratt? She wanted, and I just drew a blank on what his name is. Is terrible. The kid that plays Spider-Man now, who's
oh,
engaged to Zendaya.
oh,
Whoever that Spider-Man, and his name will come to me in 10 seconds as
yeah.
we're talking. Um, Maybe Chris could get the autographs of Spider-Man and Zendaya for me. I'm like, probably not going to reach out to my buddy to say, hey, can you reach out to Chris Pratt?
She
Tom
just
Holland.
likes you. She likes this other person. That's a lot.
Chris Pratt's not going to get you Tom Holland and Zendaya's autograph. This is about 3 or 4 years ago, probably. And so I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that ask.
Save that for something good, not anymore.
Save it for something good. So yeah. Um, well, hey, I always end these podcasts with the same general question, unless it's your second time coming on the show, because you can only ask this one once. So I think you'd agree with me that life is like a book. We have a first page, we have a last page. One of the blessings of life is we don't know how many pages are in between that. But as an author, of course, yours could be really interesting because you do time travel, but you get to write your last page. So, KJ, what does that last page say?
I guess that last page would be me neck deep in a beautiful body of water, and I had a bright sunny day, and my last page was me enjoying the water surrounding me. I don't know.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's peaceful, and
Peaceful.
I love the water. And if I'm gonna go, I'd rather be doing something like that than in some stupid hospital bed, tubes all through me and stuff. So.
I
I'm not
told,
saying I want to get eaten by a shark.
yeah.
That's not my implication, so don't put that out there. But
My daughter and I had this conversation this weekend. We were out doing some exploring together, and somehow it got morbid about like how we wouldn't want to go. And because I said, I don't want to go be in a nursing home and all this stuff. I was like, no. I said, you know what I'll do? I was like, you or your brother can just rent a Ferrari for me, and I'll just like Thelma and Louise. She didn't know what Thelma and Louise was. I'll Thelma and Louise it
off
off
the
the Grand Canyon. That'd be a good way to
there
go.
you go.
And she was just like, we're gonna get stuck with a huge bill for you to drive a Ferrari off the Grand
So
Canyon,
bad.
Dad. And I'm like, no, 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 we paid for the insurance. It's all good. It's all good. It's not just. She goes, "Can you think of something else?" And I'm like, "No, I think that's what it is. I think that's what it has to be." So
It's a finale too. You're not coming back for part two if you did that off the cliff.
not coming back, and probably not worrying about that for
Yeah,
her year.
yeah. Make it permanent. You don't want to just be then crippled in five spinal fusions and six
Yeah,
broken bones.
no,
So,
no, that definitely wouldn't be appealing. So, well, hey, where can our listeners and people that are watching this, where can they go to get a copy of Fracturing Time or any of the other three novels that are out right now for you?
all of my stuff is on Amazon under KJ Waters. You can
Okay,
look for the Stealing Time series. All the books are there. You can also go to my website, kjwaters.com.
nice.
And I'm on all the socials, so you can look at KJ Waters, either KJ Waters author or I have a comma Joaz on my Instagram. But you can find me if you just type in KJ Waters. So I'm
Thank you,
all over
KJ. I
the place.
appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.